Good evening, good evening, good evening. I'm Pastor Evans. This is Morning Star Community Christian Center Church's Life Study, which comes to you every Thursday evening, live and in living color, right here at 7 p.m. We thank you for joining us from wherever you are. And every so often, we'd like for you to let us know where you are. And if you have questions, of course, we always tell you right at the top, go straight to the chat room and begin to line up. And we'll take as many questions as we can, should there be any. But first, we always remind ourselves of what it is we are doing and the significance and importance of it. And we take our Bibles and or our digital devices on which we have our Bibles, and we hold them up and we repeat and recite these words. This is God's holy word. Receive it, believe it, and achieve it. So, Ephesians 2, verse 19. Ephesians 2, verse 19. Ephesians 2, verse 19. It reads as follows. It says, now therefore you are no longer strangers and foreigners, but fellow citizens with the saints and members of God's household, being built on the foundation of the apostles and prophets, with Jesus Christ himself as the chief cornerstone, in whom the whole building is fitted together, growing into a holy temple of the Lord, in whom you yourselves are being built into a dwelling place for God in the Spirit. Ephesians 2, verses 19 to 22. Speaking of the building of God's kingdom, the building of God's kingdom, the building of God's kingdom, the building of God's house, the building of God's church, the building of God's family. Keyword, the building. Why do we bring it up? We bring it up because Jesus, we are celebrating his birthday. And his coming represents the coming of the cornerstone, the coming of the building block of God's kingdom, God's family, God's house, God's church. Just speaking more about the specialness of Christmas, the specificity of Christmas, and of course the spirituality of Christmas. But before we get into the lesson, it's a brief lesson, but a very powerful one. I want to make an announcement, and as we normally do on the third week of each month, and that announcement is for the help that we need on tomorrow morning. This is the third week. This is our food giveaway, and this giveaway is special. And we need your help. We need special help. Some of our team members have been injured and are on the bench and won't be able to come on this occasion. But we know that there are others who can step up. So we need your help. 9:45 a.m. in the morning. 9:45 a.m. in the morning. We'll be unloading the trucks. And then at 10, we start the preparation of the food bags. And again, we need your help. Saturday morning at 8:30, again, preparation of the food bags. And at 9 a.m., we begin the distribution of the food bags. On this occasion, It's a special giveaway because in addition to the food bags, we're also giving away socks, gloves, and hats. Socks, gloves, and hats. Family members, we need your help. We need your assistance. We need volunteers to help us do this beginning tomorrow morning. Unloading the truck at 9:45 a.m. tomorrow, preparing bags at 10 a.m. And then on Saturday morning, the 18th of December, we need your help with preparing the bags at 8:30 a.m. and the distribution of the bags at 9 a.m. And in addition to distributing food bags, we'll also be distributing hats, gloves, and socks to members of the community. And of course, this is the last giveaway before the Christmas holiday. And so we need as much help as we can get. Got it? That's tomorrow, Friday, the 17th, and Saturday, the 18th. Tomorrow morning, Friday, 9:45 a.m. to unload the truck, 10 a.m. to prepare the bags, and then on Saturday, 8:30 a.m. to prepare the bags, and at 9 a.m. we distribute the food bags, the socks, the gloves, and the hats to members of the community that we do our best to serve on a regular basis. So those of you who are and will be available, please, we could use your help tomorrow morning, all right? Beginning tomorrow morning and Saturday morning as well. Thank you so much for your wonderful Morning Star cooperation. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And we look forward to seeing you on tomorrow and Saturday. Now, let me say this. So this past Sunday, you know that we talked about the fact that Christmas is specific, Christmas is special, and Christmas is spiritual. Three simple words that you can use to explain Christmas to anybody, including and especially your own children, your own family members, so that we can keep the focus of Christmas on where is it supposed to be kept, and that is on Jesus the Christ. Christmas is specific. It's about Jesus. Christmas is special. It's all about the birth of the Christ. It's all about the way to salvation. It's all about the most important birth event in human history. It's split time and history in two. Christmas is spiritual because it's talking about the birth of the Christ. Everybody got it? So that was our conversation this past Sunday, right? That was our conversation. Christmas is specific, Christmas is special, Christmas is spiritual. Now listen, I am for the sharing of gifts. I believe in the sharing of gifts, the giving of gifts to each other. And I think that's significant, and I think that's important. And I think it's okay to do on the holiday where we celebrate the birth of Jesus the Christ. If I left the impression that we should not be giving gifts to each other on Christmas Day or in celebration of the holiday, then I apologize for leaving that impression, but I want to make it clear that the sharing of gifts is a wonderful thing. As long as we understand the context in which these gifts are shared. That's my only point. My only point is the context in which these gifts are shared. First of all, the whole concept of giving needs to be established correctly at Christmas time in the context of the Christmas holiday. We give because God gave to us. That's where the giving comes from. And in recognition of Jesus as the Christ, we give to Christ, and we give to the spreading of the word of Christ throughout all ends of the earth. So that giving is an important thing. Giving is what love is. Giving is a very important part of love. Of course, forgiving is also a critical part of love. Now, but the sharing of gifts and the giving of gifts to each other is a wonderful thing, as long as we have the appropriate context. Don't tell me that some fat white man in a red and white suit came down a chimney and left gifts for you and your children at the end of at the bottom of your fireplace or whatever. That's my problem. That's my challenge. Where we participate in these foolish, fantastical fantasies that take us away from the importance and the significance of Christ. That's my problem. We can give as many gifts as we want to give to each other. We can share as many gifts as we wish to share with each other. And we ought to think about, by the way, while we're giving gifts, we ought to think about giving a gift to God, giving a gift to the building of God's kingdom, giving a gift to God's house, giving a gift to God's kingdom, and not just giving a gift to each other or giving a gift to ourselves. We ought to think about that, so that the sharing of gifts is a wonderful thing. The sharing of gifts is a joyous thing. That's a part of where the joy of Christmas comes from. The giving of gifts is fine, as long as we do it in the context of whose birthday it actually is. In fact, Christ would want us to share with each other. Christ would want us to be joyous and appreciative of each other, and to show and express that joy and appreciation by sharing and giving of gifts to each other. I believe that would please God, as long as we are doing it in the context of celebrating the birth of Jesus, and not leaving cookies and milk at the bottom of a fireplace or underneath a Christmas tree because some strange character and caricature is going to come and with flying reindeer and come down through your chimney. Some nonsensical fantasy that just does not make sense, and it dilutes and pollutes the most important birth event in human history. And we ought to be ashamed of ourselves for even allowing it to happen and for continuing it. I don't care what the rationalization is we put on it. We ought to be ashamed of ourselves. And furthermore, all the moms out there and the dads out there who work themselves hard and work 2 and 3 and 4 jobs to pay rent and put food on the table, keep a roof over their head, and still try to get a gift for their children during this holiday season, during this time when we celebrate the birth of Jesus. These moms and these dads who work hard, to struggle hard to put some smiles and some laughter in the lives of their children. I don't think they want the credit going to some strange white creature and caricature who flies around the air, some nonsensical creature flying through the air with reindeer, pulling a sleigh. I don't think they should get the. I think that the hardworking mom and the hardworking dad who worked hard to keep the roof over their head, keep clothes on your back, keep food on the table, they're the ones who should get the credit for whatever gifts get shared. And in that credit should come their accountability to Christ at this time when we celebrate the birth of Christ, and not some other silly fantasy, no matter how you rationalize it. And no matter how innocent you think it is. So yes, I am for giving gifts. Yes, I am for sharing gifts. Yes, I am for the joy of Christmas that comes from the sharing and the giving of gifts. Of course I am. I've always been. It's a wonderful family holiday. My problem is when we dilute and pollute the context of why we're doing it and giving the credit to some nonsensical, fantastical, idiotic theory of a flying sleigh pulled by flying reindeer with body parts that light up. Anyway, I hope I made that clear. We tried to emphasize it. Christmas is specific. Christmas is special. Christmas is spiritual. Christmas is all about Christ. Period. And we ought to share in and give as much joy and smiles and laughter as we possibly can. We ought to be as thankful and as grateful and express as much gratitude as we can during this time, because that's the context of the birthday. God so loved the world that he gave his only son, that whoever believes in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. And so that's a wonderful verse, John 3:16. It's a wonderful verse, and it's a wonderful context, and it's a wonderful basis for the celebration of the birth of Christ, which is the birthday that we're celebrating at this time of year. And let me remind all of us that we're celebrating the birthday of Christ. And it would be nice if all of us listening, it would be nice if all of us gave a thought to and then put some action behind giving a gift to God's house, God's kingdom, God's family, or the building and the spread of God's word to all the ends of the earth. It'd be nice to give that a thought. It'd be nice to put some action behind that thought. After all, whose birthday are we celebrating? After all, wouldn't it be a wonderful thing to bring some joy into the heart and the life of some sinner, some lost soul, some person who is confused, some person who is cloudy, doesn't know which way to go, which way to turn. And through the gift that we give, we help bring light into somebody's life. We help somebody see more clearly where they're going and how they can get there. That'd be a wonderful thing, would it not? So let's think about sharing a gift and giving a gift to the building of God's kingdom, to the building of God's house, to the building of God's family. And maybe that gift will be you decide to give, not only give a special gift at this time of year, but you give more throughout the rest of the year because you're so grateful because of how good and how merciful God has been to you. And you're grateful for how good God has been to you. Now, what we at the church and through our ministry, what we try to do is we have a program called Angel Tree, where we take donations from our congregational family, and we use those donations to provide gifts for members of our community that may be incarcerated. People who made a mistake and are paying for it, people who are locked up, people who are behind bars. Many of them still have children. Many of them still have spouses. And so we work with an organization that through which we provide gifts to their children, because they can't get to the children. They can't purchase the gift. So we through a cooperative mechanism, as the church, as God's house here on earth, as God's family, God's kingdom here on earth, we're trying to spread as much of God's joy as possible. And so we use as many means as we are capable of using to give to others who are less fortunate, to others who are compromised, to others who can't do it for themselves. So I wanted to be very clear about my expressions about gift giving and gift sharing during the time that we celebrate the birthday of Jesus. And further, I wanted to say an additional word about the specificity, specialness, and spirituality of the birth of Jesus. The birth of Jesus represents the birth of the coming of the cornerstone, the provision by God of the cornerstone of God's house here on earth. This is how critical, this is how important, this is how specific and special the birth of Jesus is. The coming of Jesus represents the coming of the cornerstone. That will serve as a centerpiece for the house of God. And it is it, as Ephesians 2 verses 19 to 22 says, it is in Jesus himself. He's the one in whom the whole building is fit together. So if Jesus didn't come, if Jesus wasn't birthed, we wouldn't have that cornerstone in whom the whole building would fit together. So that what the apostles talked about and what the prophets talked about, it all fits together in the fact that Jesus Christ is the cornerstone. He's the cornerstone, and it's in him that the whole building fits together. And these verses between 19 and 22 of chapter 2 of Ephesians, they also say that in Jesus Christ himself, in whom the whole building fits together and grows into a holy temple of the Lord, in whom you yourselves are being built up to become a dwelling place for God in the Spirit. So that Ephesians 2 verses 19 to 22 speaks of not only the building of the corporate house of God, but it speaks to the building of the human individual house of God, meaning you, meaning me. It is in us that God lives. Individually, I am a house of God. It is in me that the Spirit of God lives. It is in you that the Spirit of God lives. And it is through Jesus, who is the cornerstone, that the whole building fits together. Without Jesus, everything falls apart. Without Jesus, the whole building falls apart. Without Jesus, the house comes down. Without Jesus, the kingdom comes down. Without Jesus, it all falls apart. And here we are diluting and polluting his birthday with nonsense. That's why I get a little excited about it. I get a little intense about it. Because it makes no sense at all. Except that the enemy would have us dilute and pollute the birthday of Jesus, the specificity of it, the specialness of it, and the spirituality of it. The enemy would have us do that. The enemy would throw everything in there. Yeah, the birthday of Jesus. Let's also celebrate Santa Claus. Let's celebrate Frosty the Snowman. Let's celebrate Rudy the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Let's celebrate mistletoe. Let's celebrate Christmas trees. Let's celebrate anything and everything except what we ought to be celebrating, which is the fact that God loved us so much that he sent his only begotten son and birthed him in human form to give us the model and the example of how we can live holy and live righteous and be joyous no matter what is going on. Now, to me, that's exciting. That's exciting enough. The fact that the Almighty God loved us that much, that he sent the very idea of himself in the flesh, that he gave us his son. He sacrificed his son, who sacrificed his life, who was beaten and bruised and battered and cursed at, spat upon, and nailed to the cross, stabbed in the side, bled until he died. And here we are throwing in all kinds of dilution and pollution at the time when we should be celebrating the most amazing and incredible, even incomprehensible, magnificent and glorious gift known in the universe, Jesus the Christ. And we have a nerve to fall in line with that kind of nonsensical foolishness. Get this now. When you build something, when builders build, whether you're building a car or building a building or building a house or building an office or building whatever you're building, there is an architecture of it and there's an engineering of it. And what's so magnificent is that God is the architect of the universe. He's also the engineer of the universe. God is our divine architect. He's our divine engineer. Now, architects, they focus themselves on materials and the design and the structure and the building. Whereas the engineers, they focus themselves on the properties of the materials, the function of the design, the operation of the structure, and the construction of the building, right? So architecture and engineering go together. As you can see, the engineering side of the picture has more to do with function and operation and the properties and qualities of whatever materials you are using. So it's function and operation and the construction of this thing. The architecture side deals with, well, what materials are we going to use? And what is the design? What is the structure? What is the building? In terms of the universe, God is both the architect and the engineer. In terms of God's kingdom, God is the architect and the engineer. In terms of God's family, God is the architect and the engineer. In terms of God's house, God is the architect and the engineer. When you talk about building God's house, when you talk about building God's building, building God's kingdom, building God's church, building God's family, building God's structure. God is the architect and the engineer. Critical to the building of God's house, as Ephesians 2:19-22 tells us, critical to the building of God's house, as the Christmas celebration teaches us, as the birth of Christ teaches us, critical to the building of God's house is the materials we use. In fact, the quality of something can be found in the quality of the materials. Number one, the quality of the materials. Number two, how those materials are put together. Number three, and how they function and operate together, how they're constructed together. But it begins with the quality of the materials that you use. And so that the materials must be the highest quality. And so when we talk about God's house, when we talk about God's kingdom, we know that it centers around the chief cornerstone, which is Jesus the Christ, who is, if we look at him as the material with which the house of God is built, then we know then that the material is pure, the material is precious, the material is powerful, the material is perfect, the material is pleasing, because it all applies to Jesus. And with those qualities applying to the material that God uses to build his kingdom, you can't help but have a magnificent kingdom. But Jesus has got to be at the center of it, which is why Christmas is so important, and not to be diluted or polluted by foolishness. When I pause like that, I'm pausing because I want what I just said to sink in. Because sometimes people find it difficult to give up on and to let go their traditions and their customs and the things that they grew up with. We don't want to let it go, no matter how foolish it is, no matter how ridiculous it is. It is something that we grew up with, something that we've always done. It's hard to get people to change. Now, this doesn't mean they cannot change, because they can. People can change. And I believe I said this past Sunday. Maybe I didn't say it. Someone say it now. Everybody who comes to Jesus, everybody who has an experience with Jesus is changed as a result. When you really have an experience with Jesus, you change as a result. And that change occurs from the inside out. And that's why Christmas is so important. That's why the building of the house of God is so important. And that's why the birth of Jesus is so important. And so we can have all kinds of celebrations. We can have singing and dancing and the giving of gifts and the sharing of food and the sharing of fellowship and the sharing of fun and the sharing of smiles and laughter. We can do all of that, and it will be absolutely wonderful and perfectly acceptable to God, provided we do it in the context that it should be done in. And that context is Jesus the Christ. So, what is Psalm 118, verses 22 and 23? What does it say? The stone that the builders rejected has become the cornerstone. This is God's doing, and it's marvelous in my eyes. This is the day that the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. And the day of the birth of Jesus, that is the day that the Lord has made. And as the angel said to the shepherds, we should rejoice and be glad in it. For this day could have been made by none other than God himself. And therefore, this day should be celebrated like it could have been made by none other than God himself. And when we do that, we will experience levels of joy that we've not experienced before. When we do that, we'll be clear that a part of the specialness of Christmas is the fact that Jesus came to show us the way to salvation. So here we are. Now, maybe, you have, as I said before, there are some things, some traditions, some customs that we have had, since we were knee high to a grasshopper, and some of them we just do because we've always done them. We don't even know why we do them. And as such, we ought to question, especially if they have anything to do with the dilution or the pollution of the Christmas holiday. When will the church stop following the world? When will the church stand up and be the church? And be at the cutting edge of what is righteous, doing the right thing at the right time in the right way for the right reason. When? If not now, when? If not this, what? Now is as good a time as any, and this subject is as good a subject as any. Speaking of the birth of Christ. So here we are. I know moving forward, we're going to do better. Moving forward, this pandemic has caused us to re-examine and relook at a whole bunch of things. And hopefully it will cause us to take a serious look at our past behavior regarding the celebration of the birthday of Jesus the Christ. And moving forward, all of us, even those of us who try to rationalize the intrusion of these nonsensical fairy tales like Santa Claus, Frosty, and whoever else. Oh, yeah. The flying reindeer with the body parts that light up. Maybe now is a good time to re-examine all of that. Maybe now is a good time to drop all of that. Drop that net and become a fisher of men. Let's focus on what we should be focusing on. Let's share gifts. Let's give gifts. Let's have fun. Let's have fellowship. Let's have food. Let's have family. Let's have all of that. Let's have the pure joy that God would want us to have. but let's have it in the appropriate context that God intended for us to have it in. And that is the celebration of the gift of God's Son, Jesus the Christ. All right. That's enough, because, as you know, I could talk about this subject for quite a while. But I believe I've said enough about it. And maybe you have a question. Maybe you have a question about it, about what you've always taught your children, and what the children get in school, and how should you handle this with this one, or handle that, or what harm does it do? What harm does it do? To talk about, Frosty or whatever. We do this in all areas of activity. If you have a question that we can be helpful with in the next few minutes, go to the chat room, and we'll do our best to be helpful with the response that's scripturally based, and hopefully will guide you in the right direction that will result in your being stronger in your relationship with God. All right. So go to the chat room if you have a question, and we're gonna go to our brother Terry in a minute. But let me just say this before we take any questions, should there be any. If not, then we'll just say good night and see you we'll see you tomorrow morning at 9:45, which is I want to make this announcement again. 9:45 a.m. in the morning. We need you to help us unload the trucks. At 10 o'clock, we need you to help us prepare the food bags. This is our Christmas time giveaway to the community. Saturday morning, 8:30, further preparation of bags, and at 9 o'clock a.m., the giving away of food bags, along with we're giving away socks and gloves and hats, trying to be as helpful to people in need as possible. In addition to food bags, we're giving away socks and gloves and hats. We need volunteers. We need your help. Please come and help us in the morning and on Saturday morning. God bless you, and thank you for your wonderful Morning Star cooperation. So let me call Brother Terry. Brother Terry, are you there? And do we have any questions?
Good evening, Pastor. Once again, we're Windex clear tonight. No questions, just a bunch of affirmations to all that you said this evening.
Okay, wonderful. There you go. Although I know somebody's hiding, because I know somebody's been talking to their children about Santa Claus and so forth. But we have presented you with what an alternative narrative. We have presented you with what you can say, and then some of you will probably just ignore and continue to do what it is you're doing. Unfortunately, I pray that that's not the case in too many of you, but should it be, God bless you. We'll keep praying for you anyway. So with that, again, remember, we'll see you in the morning at 9:45 and a.m. and then on Saturday morning at 8:30. Remember, we're giving away food bags, hats, gloves, and socks on this coming Saturday. We need your help. Please come and join us tomorrow and volunteer to help us in our Christmas distribution. All right. Thank you so much. I want you to continue to be safe, continue to be strong, continue to be vaccinated, get your booster shot, and most of all, continue to be blessed. And we'll see you tomorrow morning at our giveaway, and then Sunday morning at 9:30 for our Christmas service at Morning Star Community Christian Center Church. Thank you. God bless you.